My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. Notice: intellectual property theft is particularly egregious and equally unlawful where the sole inventor and creator of the intellectual property is the targeted individual. Erica Lorraine Spencer, subject to the unconstitutional and inhumane government system of gang stalking, otherwise referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices, because of which the intellectual property created by the targeted individual, who is, in fact, Erica Lorraine Spencer, as the intellectual property also proves, serves to establish via evidence and expose the existence of criminal surveillance and thus an inherent threat posed by the U.S. government and the civilian population sharing engagement in the unlawful system. Such evidence that includes all of the content created by Erica Lorraine Spencer, images, videos, audio, etc., belongs solely and entirely to Erica Lorraine Spencer only and is necessarily published online in order to protect her life, safety, and liberty as the targeted individual, who is also the intellectual property owner, no less protected from theft procured through targeting by a public entity. Theft of any intellectual property belonging to Erica Lorraine Spencer, which is necessarily committed while she, being both creator and inventor, remains oppressed by the public entity via criminal surveillance, is a criminal and inhumane means of infringement under all circumstances and not protected nor enforceable pursuant to any invalid or fraudulent acts of copyright, trademarks, patents, etc., including as it pertains to any ideas associated with or generated from the intellectual property or the intellectual property owner, Erica Lorraine Spencer, whether creative, business, or otherwise, nor does the intellectual property owner consent to any such means of infringement and theft.
Disinfection, okay. I don't know where.
This recording starting at 12:05 a.m. And this is evidence of the psychopathic pacing, which is the third iteration since I've been at the OVITT Family Community Library. The entity doing so with regard to the customary obsessive stalking, just follow me from place to place. I'm here, so we're going to worship you by flying in circles over your head. The entity does so again as I publish the podcast about that psychotic behavior. The entity does so again after committing assault with a deadly weapon and battery. And the entity is doing so again as I publish the evidence about the battery and about everybody else that's being prosecuted who is engaging in what is also, as an entity, stalking me obsessively in a helicopter while the government has planned my murder. And so have the people of the state. They're going to be the population. The government is being prosecuted. And they're engaging in the third iteration of psychotic behavior. This is going in a military tribunal. Those that are being removed from the military are going to be committed. This is the third time they're doing that this is pursuant to federal stalking as I publish it, psychopathic pacing. As they're stalking me and I publish it, psychopathic pacing. As I go from place to place, psychopathic pacing. And doing so by spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars, which becomes thousands and thousands of dollars in helicopters, where the entity is not doing anything productive, nothing legitimate. It's all stalking me. It's 12:08 a.m. They are right now just flying in circles. These are the suicidal demons that are stalking and engaged in an act of violence because they are so enraged that they are both obsessed with me and that you know it. The demon-possessed that are a society of suicidal stalkers and sex offenders do not want to be outed like that, and that is exactly what happened. So they sent a little sexually confused little lesbian. She's an adolescent with a box knife in her hand. In the event, she was prepared to get beat up, and this is why she had a knife running toward me in that manner, and doing so on behalf of the Ontario Police Department, who are being disbanded, on behalf of the Ontario International Airport, where the U.S. are stalking me in planes, that's being shut down because of it, on behalf of the Ontario Fire Department, that will be no more, that's engaging in stalking me using fire trucks, and doing so as the people of the state, the stalkers that engage in what is their entire lives devoted to stalking me, one person. It's the P.O.C. It's 12:09 a.m. Listen to that. The audible activity of mental illness. And the entity that defamed my character, which also includes San Bernardino County and the Ontario Police Department, they're going to prison for this. You don't lie on someone's character when you are this absurdly psychotic, they're all getting locked up. Everybody that uttered a defamatory syllable, including Lisa Rogan, are going to federal prison. And I mean every single last one of them. This type of mental illness, and they had the audacity to defame. This is what they do. You see how psychotic they are. They're not even human beings. These are creatures that are no longer secretly amongst us. And while they engage in levying war by sitting in a courtroom and engaging in criminal defamation like what Lisa Rogan did in February of 2020, she's going to federal prison. She's what you call a psychopath. Oh, we want to get quiet now because they don't remember that Lisa Rogan's going to prison for it, but she is. And I have what are hundreds of videos that are putting her in prison. Lisa Rogan is going to federal prison. She could retire tomorrow. This old biddy is going to federal prison. It remains on the record what she committed, and there is no statute of limitations, especially while the military is still stalking me and showing how psychotic they are, engaging in what is targeting perfectly sane and advanced American citizens like myself. When you are in fact mentally ill, when you engage in that level of malicious conduct and this level of failing at what is a criminal objective in the first place, in front of everyone, where you're also incriminating everybody else. And you're so psychotic that you're not even thinking about that. This is the third time the entity's engaging in what is hula hooping with a helicopter over my head. It's pathetic. This is the entity that's engaging in that. It's 12:11 a.m. And like I said, there's a laundry list of people. This is the proof of gang stalking by an entire government. This is what the entity, again, they're unintelligent and they're mentally ill. This is proof of the entire entity. This is proof that everybody in Upper Public Library is stalking me. This is proof that Elizabeth is stalking me. And they're all going to federal prison. The entity has no idea how a criminal conspiracy is prosecuted. The entity has no idea with regard to the meaning of a pattern of conduct that is shared. This is the entity that's engaging in that conduct, and every single last one are going to prison. P.O.C. Now that is the entity that is targeting with commercial planes. And that's the prosecution of the commercial airline companies conspiring my murder, engaging in what is a battery today, for which there will be unprecedented damages and businesses going out of existence. They're not going to exist anymore. It's as simple as that. The entity has lost, and they engage in violence because of that loss, which is also severely deranged and psychotic behavior. And this is what an entity is doing, typically in the dark, where no one knows, where they engage in acts of violence as a government that's engaging in what is gratifying its violent and obsessive impulses, such as stalking people in helicopters, making themselves feel superior, and then going back home to their family. No, they're going to be locked up in cages where animals belong. They belong in the cages that they're going in, and in the military tribunals where it's going to happen. They're going to be specifically identified, and they're going to prison. And that includes the demons of the Rancho Cucamonga Superior Court, of San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. The demons that are in these positions are going to prison. While this little gay teenager is attacking me with a knife in her hand, they're going to federal prison. Tracy Banks is going to prison. Eric Spencer's going to prison. Everybody that defamed my character, while you hear this helicopter activity, that immediately silences because they forget for a second when they'll be doing the same thing in 32 minutes. They're going to prison, though. And this is the advantage, and also what you need to be aware of are what are the threats while the mentally ill gargoyles are engaging in monitoring in the United States of America. P.O.C. It is currently 12:13 a.m. on June 7th, 2026. All right, this is the entity that is stalking as I walk outside of the entrance doors. This is, again, Southwest Airlines, that's Vagina Monitor. So I'm on the opposite side of this brick wall, walking out of the women's restroom. As I'm walking out, Southwest Airlines is already stalking, monitoring, tracking my steps, which you see visually when you see the fake sun. You also see it through their presence in the path. These are demons that are engaging in stalking you. So while I'm inside on the opposite side of this brick wall where you've seen impossible light activity, and they are stalking with light now, the entity is amplifying audible activity, which is, again, compensating for supplementing impossible light activity. But I've also documented, it's on the record, very heavily documented at Alvarado Gardens in LA. The engineer light is gray colored. It's present. I documented that already. The engineer light is regarding the illusion that there's no light, and that's not true. Engineer light is always present, and it takes on different colors. So this is gray colored engineer light. That's on the record. I mean, you can look at that with regard to the entity. They're walking in engineer light now. He's monitoring. While I'm walking out, Southwest Airlines is already flying, and the plane Erica, ERIKA, is gang stalking at register number 1. The customer, they're on surveillance cameras, and it's currently 8:16 a.m. They are tracking my steps, walking in front of me, walking out of the exit. Southwest Airlines is flying this way. Erica's crossing path as I'm walking out of the bathroom, walking this way. And Southwest Airlines is meeting right here. And I'm documenting the same ambush conduct while the fake sun is shining, which you already know is rising and setting here. And the entity engaging what is stalking, like what Southwest Airlines is doing at 11 o'clock in the morning, hovering over Habit while I'm standing at the King's Inc., like they're landing right here in front of the subway. I'm documenting Amazon Prime hovering over El Pollo Loco like they're going to land at the same location right here, and there's no airport here. And Amazon Prime and Southwest are stalking me in other cities where they are engaged in the same pattern of targeting and monitoring my vagina. These are the corporate entities that are being federally prosecuted criminally and civilly. They're being prosecuted for treason. They're levying war, and they're doing so with the gang members that are engaging in battery. Like what this entity, Stater Brothers, committed battery last night. I understand how the gang violence is being prosecuted. All right, the entity is engaging in what is physical violence, which I documented Stater Brothers as the entity engaging in. Southwest Airlines is documented engaging in, and they're doing so while they're also poisoning as an entity. While that entity, that's the military that are homosexuals, and the entity is engaging in poisoning me on behalf of the military. The entity is engaging in what is stealing my property, damaging my property, stalking, and engaging in assault and battery with a knife in hand while committing a battery on video. That's the entity, and this is gang violence. And this is the disbanding of the Ontario Police Department. This is what the police departments are engaging in. They're not investigating. They are committing these acts, and they are psychotic while they are under the guise of being law enforcement, that is combating that which is unlawful, while they are actually engaged in what is unlawful, and it is surveillance, and they commit murder and kidnappings pursuant to that surveillance. It is currently 8:18 a.m. This is relevant to the entity walks in the bathroom sex offenders that are poisoning me, that are obsessed with my vagina, and that are hostile because I put those facts on the internet and then commit a battery, which is what you're looking at last night. This lesbian that's approaching in an aggressive manner, this is an adolescent is what it looks like. And this adolescent is afraid to get beat up, is why she's running like she's looking so bold. No, she has a knife in her hand, and this is why she's fearful of the fact she's going to get beat up. But I'm not into beating up kids, and I'm also not here to be fighting. The entity's going to prison for that. They're going to federal prison, and they're the lesbians that are mad because I put those facts on the internet, however. And I documented that violence that 7MVG563 committed on video. Okay, they're engaging in stalking right now. This is pacing, going in this direction and going in this direction. And they're mentally ill with the entity that has no terminals. Southwest Airlines is Terminal 4. They're stalking. License plate 7MNX420, and they're psychotic while they're supposed to be doing this as strangers, and this is supposed to be the same criminal conduct that makes an American citizen look crazy, and that's also why they're being subject to martial law. 9 Edward Charlie Paul 526. They are engaged in this pattern of conduct, and David Quinones is going to prison. Okay, this is the P.O.C. A grocery store that's engaging in surveillance is one that is a threat to the public. And Stater Brothers, especially after I get done prosecuting them criminally civilly, they will not exist anymore. And that's particular with regard to martial law. This is P.O.C. Bathroom monitoring. It's 8:19 a.m. These are the demons of Vos Church. Okay, sitting engaging in surveillance, waiting on me. The fake sun moves from Stater Brothers. It's no longer over Stater Brothers. It's over me in Ontario at Laurel. And the entity is stalking by plane. And the demons know they're being documented, so they're making a U-turn. Where they're, oh, there they are. Here they are right here. It's a large white commercial plane dipping off into the sky. Vos Church is gang stalking. They're also gang stalking at Vine Avenue and Holt. All right, they're engaging in surveillance while the entity is following with light source, if you're able to see that. They're also gang stalking on the roads and the highways at nightfall while I'm being molested with impossible light. These are hostile demons that are upset, like the demons of Rock of Faith, that's light activity while he's turning his turn signal on. This is light. That's not sunlight, that's a demon, that's engineered light. And this is a demon saying what is the business of gang stalking churches with regard to the pattern of conduct. That's a business, and that's a demon. That's P.O.C. It's not different from what UPS does, from what FedEx does. It's not different from what the demons of the Ontario Police Department do, the demons of the Ontario Fire Department. You name the city, it does not matter. That's not the sun, first of all. And second of all, it's currently 9:16 a.m. The entity's keeping the fake sun over me while I'm already in Upland, California, while I'm still walking to Upland, California, while I'm still standing at the OVITT Family Community Library, which is distinct from this. When I'm at the OVITT Family Community Library, the entity's keeping the fake sun on what is the east side of the OVITT Family Community Library, by the Page One Cafe side where Securitas is gang stalked with light activity. This is on the west side of the Page One Cafe. This is the entity that's stalking me with the fake sun. You're looking at a demon that knows who I am and is also engaged in what is poisoning as an entity, battery, assault with a deadly weapon as an entity that is engaging in surveillance. Whether you're able to see that commercial plane ride or not, I've documented the entity stalking with commercial planes. It's already established, but the entity was stalking with Vos Church in particular. Now, these particular tactics, because it doesn't matter, it's an entity, but the entity likes to engage in those that are hostile. So I'm documenting the demons that are engaged in gang stalking via congregations, okay? And so those particular religious demons are engaging in what are acts of my turn, I want to gang stalk her with the military, and that's why Vos Church is engaging in the P.O.C. because I've documented them. That's why. Okay, it's very much personal when the demons are engaging. 8 UND 513, a heavily documented gang stalker, stalking on the roads and the highways. All right, none of this is traffic, and none of it is protected. None of it. They all committed battery last night. They all engaged in assault with a deadly weapon last night. And they also engaged in poisoning. Okay, 7-Eleven at 636 North Vine Avenue, engaging in poisoning as an entity. Okay, and this is going to be documented with regard to the P.O.C. 7-Eleven is the corporate entity that is gang stalking with the U.S. government. and they're already subject to federal prison. They engaged in kidnapping as an entity with the Ontario Police Department, particularly Jason Knighton, Officer Melnick, and Lester Keys on January 13, 2020. It's a very heavily documented venue, and they engaged in poisoning on June 6, 2026. This is the P.O.C. While those church, that's not a church. That's why they're stalking me. And that's also why there's engineer light. While you know who it is that you are gathering with, because they're not actual followers of Christ. These are the Nephilim, the demon-possessed, that want to pose and appear like you, but they're creatures. They're dogs disguised in meat suits. They want to look like human beings. And you need to know this so that you will stop being influenced by them, stop following them, stop being like them, stop listening to them. That's the P.O.C. It is currently 9:19 a.m. Alrighty, this is the stalking that Vos Church was engaging in. It's P.O.C. Okay, they were just lying in wait. They're engaging in what is stalking in the past, and they're doing so while they are engaging in what is a documented act of retaliation while they're on the record gang stalking, and they're doing so with the people of the state. License plate. This is stalking on the roads and the highways and furtherance of murder. 56269 Victor 1. The roads and the highways and the entity that's gang stalking, this is going to affect the privilege it is to drive in California. Understand that? While they're engaging in the criminal pattern of conduct, there's a minor in that vehicle. Gang stalking, it's a female. She's a demon as well. P.O.C. If this is the pattern of conduct, the entity doesn't have car accidents when they're engaging in surveillance. This is absolutely going to affect the privilege that it is while they are engaging in the criminal P.O.C. in the specific environment with the U.S. military in furtherance of murder. You don't have a privilege to do that. So this is going to directly impact that, especially the gang stalkers in Cali. P.O.C. It is currently 9:22 a.m. Alrighty, he's documenting himself being engaging in the pattern of conduct. 56269 Victor 1. P.O.C. And just to be clear, Stater Brothers is in fact stalking. So when you see Salvador and the employees holding a meeting over the enchiladas at the entrance, they're stalking with Southwest Airlines that is stalking now. And they're particularly mentally ill while they engage in that form of stalking someone who they also know is documenting it. This is the entity that's doing so while the fake Stater Brothers as well, they're demons. And Stater Brothers poses a threat to the public, which is a basis to remove it from existence. This is at Bethel congregation where they're engaging in surveillance in their cars, and then they are also behaving as though they are Christians and that they love you. These are the demons that are going to prison. All right, they're sitting in the Bible study, stalking me by helicopter. They're going to prison. Southwest Airlines, that's by a matter of judicial notice. They're not taking off. They're not headed to a destination. They're doing so under that, which is a matter of judicial notice. This is not the natural environment. It's still here after 6 o'clock in the evening while that same Southwest Airlines is stalking me, even at this same location. Southwest Airlines is stalking in Upland, California at 1444 North Euclid Avenue, where the entity is right now at 10:16 a.m., keeping the fake sun over the Upland Public Library. This is the P.O.C. It's the P.O.C. This is surveillance by an entity that committed battery last night and assault with a deadly weapon because they are so frustrated that their sexual obsession with me, that their ongoing obsessive stalking, and that their closeted mental illness has all been exposed by me. And so they resort to what are acts of violence, and that's a mentally ill person. That's a gargoyle that you see running toward me with a knife in her hand. Okay, because she was very scared that she was going to get stomped out. So she comes with a weapon, and that could be disguised as somebody that thinks that they're a gangster. That they're brave, in other words, as I referenced the vernacular. That's a threat under the law. She is going to prison, and so are a lot of other people. A lot. This is P.O.C. It is currently 10:16 a.m. They're all stalking. All of them. P.O.C. (41976) Xavier 2. That's called crossing path. And that's how an entity is stalking. That's how the government, in other words, is stalking. And doing so on foot. This is also identifying stalking. And you identify that as a group. This is psychopathic pacing. A fake sun. Okay, this is the crime scene where you recognize the mentally ill that are engaging in surveillance, and they are literally stalking one person after another. And this is an entity that's engaging in that, which is a stalking society. Where they engage in this crossing path, 7SNY281, and impossible light touches me up here, which is impossible. They're all demons. They're not just stalkers. It's not just a society of stalkers. They're the demon possessed. Alrighty, if you'll recall the evidence, I am waking up in the morning at this bus stop. That's 537 North Euclid Avenue. And the entity is rising the sun here. This is where it is now. This is the entity that's engaged in what are all means of crossing path by those who are congregating at the venue, 9UUZ 706, with demons that are gang stalking, monitoring by taking a picture, its use of a communication device under the fake sun. And these are the ones that are molesting with impossible light activity. They're mentally ill, engaging in vagina monitoring. They're violent sex offenders, and they're engaging in this conspicuously. They are absolutely psychotic. All right, this is the entity that's engaging in malicious activity, where you are aware of the fact that this is where the entity is engaging in the worship of Satan. Okay, so this is where you are mindful of the deception that is right in front of your face. In plain view, Satan is monitoring us. Okay, you are under surveillance in plain view, and they call it a church, which again has substantive value. Everyone uses words that they don't mean. Okay, so you know them, and you know them by their deeds. This is the entity that will speak something, but it doesn't mean that that is the case, and you are the spirit. This is the P.O.C. is providing you what is ongoing substance regarding the ways in which you ought to be aware of what demons are presenting to you, what they're communicating to you expressly and impliedly. And this is the same environment where I was this morning, walking into the venue where the entity was stalking by Southwest Airlines that's clearly not headed to a destination. And Southwest Airlines that in particular is stalking so heavily, you already know that they're stalking, but there's more than just stalking in a plane. There's an entity that is stalking. And the entity that engages in what Southwest Airlines is engaging on video here at the same parking lot is telling on everyone. There is absolutely zero exception. Okay, this is the P.O.C. and this is stalking on the roads and the highways. 8WJY860, and they are, by virtue of this impossible light source, they know who I am. They're intentionally and knowingly engaging in that, and this is malice because it's appearing under the guise of this is traffic. They're strangers, not knowing you, not looking at you, not addressing you. That's the mentally ill population that committed assault with a deadly weapon, very much focused on me, very much hostile, as I published the podcast about a society of stalkers. The society of sex offenders are not limited to the age of majority. This is what you need to know. Not at all. Okay, their sexual violence is occurring amongst those that are under 18. That's because they're monitoring spirits and they're monitoring your genitalia, and that has a title under the law. It's called sex offender. And they are hostile because they're being referred to as what they are, and they are demons, and they are stalking. And the entity has stalking, ongoing conduct, stalking conduct by Southwest Airlines here. And that's what I'm documenting hours earlier. And I'm also present with regard to the entity keeping the fake sun. It's currently 1:41 p.m. where the fake sun is over me in a different city, such as in Upland, California, where the entity is gang stalking me. And you know what Fontana Police Department are doing under the fake sun at or around this time, 1:30, 1:35. This is an entity, or during the 1 p.m. hour rather. The two are not coexisting, and the sun would never be present over the same location in the morning like I have when I'm getting up in the morning at the bus stop, where those who are Christians are monitoring gang stalking further into murder while you're homeless. They do not know Christ, okay? These are demons. And the gang stalking church, the demons that congregate, are creating the illusion, number one, that there is an exception as I am exposing the demon possessed. There is not. Number two, that there is those who are believers amongst them. And I want to be clear, the only exception is the targeted individual. These people are dead. And moreover, they're not even people, they're demons. Okay, the fake sun is here. Everybody in that church building was gang stalking me right now, and they go to the extent to prove that while Pastor Lee is reciting his pre-written prayers that the entity utters and repeats after, they're doing so while the entity is amplifying plane activity. And while you're crossing path right here, and this is the entity that is stalking in the sky space with plane activity, and that's the military. Okay, the homosexuals that are very much triggered by the truth that I speak, and they're obsessed with me as well. That's why they're so triggered, because they worship me, and they are demons that worship me. All right, and they are going to be inside of military tribunals, and they're going to be committed as well. And I've also told them that while they're monitoring the one that has sentenced them. Okay, and they've been given the convenience of knowing about it beforehand. They are mentally ill, however, and this is speaking to what is martial law. This is the necessity of that while you are looking at that which is inevitable, that which is feckless. You're still stalking and you're going to prison. You're counting down the days and you're still stalking. This is the entity that's going to be locked down because they share the mental illness. So now we're beyond conviction. We are analyzing, creating policies to deal with a mentally ill and corrupt and demon-possessed population that surround us that we're no longer ignorant about. And it informs public policy. It informs legislation, local, state, and federal. It even informs what is no longer a privilege that demons have while they murder us on the roads and highways, and a whole insurance industry is profiting off of it. That's necessarily under the guise of what is no surveillance. Okay, surveillance directly rebuts car accidents and plane accidents. Alrighty, this is P.O.C. The entity's ongoing privilege. You don't have a right to drive. It's a privilege in the state, and when the state's a gang stalker, that is going to substantially change. This is the entity that's gang stalking in this video on the roads and the highways. This is P.O.C. It is currently 1:44 p.m. Alrighty, this is P.O.C. License 9AHW190. That plane activity, it's a matter of judicial notice that this is not a takeoff, and this is stalking. This is terrorism while stalking by the military using commercial planes that are not engaged in what are takeoffs from an airport to a destination, which is what this is. And this is the ongoing basis to remove a privilege by the domestic terrorists from being on the roads and the highways. No driving. They're gang stalking. All right, the entities engaged in this. Remember, I'm at this same intersection. That's G Street, G as in George, and Euclid Avenue in the morning, where the entity is stalking by planes while I'm walking in the street to get these gang stalkers on the road, and the entity is stalking in the middle of the street. Remember that video? I will attach that because this is where the entity is stalking, and it is currently 1:46 p.m. When I'm in Upland. That's not over my head at the Bucket Crab and Crawfish, which is a gang stalking establishment, making money off of surveillance. All right, the entity is also speaking to the fake sun that's remaining while I'm at this same location as I stated in the morning, and the entity on the roads and the highways is keeping under surveillance while I'm walking to another city that shares a pattern of conduct. That's why it's sitting over the Upland Public Library in this same manner, but in a different address. Okay, you do not have the same ecological address, and the sun is not one that's remaining over one. For example, let's just use the city of Ontario, because this is all ridiculous. The sun's not remaining over the whole city everywhere. You see how it's not over there? It's not over there. It's not over the Starbucks. And it's also not over the Upland Public Library. It's not over all of their cars. And it's also not moving while I stay still. But that's the opposite when I am documenting. These are the demons that are gang stalking. Goofy 3 does not maintain a privilege. There is no constitutional right to be on the roads and the highways with a driver's license operating a dangerous vehicle where they are engaging in levying war. And I've prosecuted a population stalking me on the roads and the highways throughout California and into Nevada. And this is the basis whereby the people of the state that are subject to martial law that have shown you how much they enjoy stalking and molesting with light, they're not going to be on the roads. They're going to be permanently parked. And the entity, it's the same with those that are gang stalking by planes. And for one airline to engage in it, and the entire entity is, every single corporate actor, all the commercial airline companies, in other words, are being federally prosecuted. This is the P.O.C. And these are the ongoing implications, but they're also the inevitable repercussions regarding what the entity has told you about, because they could have stopped when I started documenting. You pay attention to the fact that they have not. This is a threat, and this is a threat that's going to be neutralized. They are getting off the roads and the highways where they're taking the lives of American citizens. This is P.O.C. It is currently 1:48 p.m. It's 2:10 p.m. and this is 537 North Euclid Avenue, where you saw Jay Sandoval, you saw Edwards, you saw Gerber, you saw the demons engaging in criminal summoning at the Stater Brothers, you saw the fire department, you've seen Omnitrans, you've seen Brightview, the city of Ontario, you've seen all manner of what is the people of the state who are in the morning under the fake sun that's supposedly rising. This is the stage that they're all standing on while they are acting like they're sane. They're acting like they're humans. They're acting like they're engaging in what is that which they have a right to do in the Constitution. They don't. And I want to be clear. You do not have a privilege to engage in what is gang stalking on the roads and the highways. At the fire department engaging in surveillance and vagina monitoring. They don't have a purpose. All they're doing is stalking right now. And science, the judicially noticed fact, is what is shutting down Michael Gerken's ongoing criminal operation in furtherance of murder, in concert with 8 David Apple 161, where the fake sun is over me at 2:10 p.m. at the Upland Public Library over my head in this same manner in Upland, California. After I have already documented my route to the venue in Upland, and these gang stalkers, the entity, engaged in following me to that venue. All right, this is the P.O.C. and this is across the street from Bethel Congregation, where the fake sun remains over me, where Southwest Airlines is stalking me, where the people of the state are stalking me, which you identify in the scientifically proven evidence that the entity is engaging in the criminal pattern of conduct. That is, under the fake sun, Nothing but surveillance is underway. And the demons, these pansies that engage in running up on me with a knife in their hand because they're suicidal, because they're mentally ill, because they're humiliated, engage in what are stalking you in plain view. And that is being entirely shut down in every regard. This is levying war on American citizen. And then in the face of that, the U.S. military has shown you how much of a violent threat they are to the American people. How much they intend to, in concert with the terrorists who are the people of the state, will maintain no constitutional protections. The federal government does not owe you any sort of assistance. The federal government does not owe you any sort of support. You do not have a right under the Constitution to drive on the roads and the highways, including to engage in what is federal group stalking and monitoring. And as the state has documented, that is, again, waiving what is a privilege. All right. First of all, to be in this country, i.e. deportation. Second of all, the protection of children, that is loss of custody. Third of all, what is the privilege to be on the roads and the highways, which is going to have an inevitable impact on the economy of the demon-possessed, who have been engaging in murdering, stealing from, kidnapping, and as you're witnessing, damaging, criminally defaming, engaging with sexually violating. Who cares about the terrorists and how they're going to figure it out? Because that's no concern under the Constitution. It's actually not. And these are domestic terrorists. Domestic terrorism is fully capable of being prosecuted. This is the P.O.C. It is currently 2:13 p.m.